Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Autopsy with Maddee P. I'm your host, Maddee P. Girl. I don't know how that became my tag to start things out, but it is Maddee P. Girl, and I do miss you. Did you miss me? I feel that way. Sorry, too soon? I'll slow it down, girl. I didn't just flick my hand, my paw, if you will. I can't lie to y'all, there are a few fruit flies left. I told you that they would be gone, and I did my best. These motherfuckers, I edited the last episode and I was like, oh, this is atrocious. But we live life on life's terms, right? Ew, cheesy. But I mean, sorry, y'all. I can't stop filming just because I'm being assaulted daily by these motherfuckers. Okay? Anyways, hey, girl. Hey, girl, hey. What did we talk about last week? Discipline. Discipline while I was out of control with the fruit flies. Got it. Heard, right? Today we're going to talk about anxiety, and I told you we were going to talk about it because I'm excited, but is that the right word for talking about anxiety? I don't know, but we're going to do some warm-ups first, of course. I'm going to keep it short because guess what today is? Another day that I am filming before work. I always cut it close a little bit before I do this, but I go to work in a good mood, and maybe it's because I'm turning it on for the camera, and I joke and I say the customer is my camera, turning it on, you know? Anyways, today it is thundering outside. And you know what pisses me off about that? Y'all know about my sun guilt. We've talked about it before. You might have sun guilt yourself. And that's okay, you know? I'm trying to grow out of that because I don't want cancer. I know. Can you believe it? I have not burnt. No, I did burn my face one time when I went to the Wonder for Aubrey's birthday. That is the only time I have burnt my face this summer. Y'all, I got it back looking like a tortilla. Okay, from the past summers that I've had and the lack of sunscreen used. I just realized I have to tell you about something first before we talk about the lightning. And look, I ripped them off. I'm scared to see my nail girl. She's going to kill me. But I had to. I missed my appointment and we didn't have anything else. So here I am. But I feel like a lesbian and I love it. Like, it's giving. I'm feeling just in it, you know, and I'm warm. Sorry. I was wondering, I haven't spoken that much today. I went by to see my Abby girl and her baby. Yes, y'all know my queen. Y'all know my queen Carmi, okay? But aside from that, I haven't really talked much. So I was wondering what this was going to be like. Because I couldn't tell if I was in a good mood or bad mood. Okay, I'll get into this part then. I've had a stressful few days. Really stressful. And I just have so many things in my life. And they say too blessed to be stressed, and I am blessed to be stressed, honestly. I used to not stress about nothing except for where the fuck I'm getting my liquor at and where my drugs at, though, right? Well, that's not the case, okay? My life is chock full of shit, and this end of this summer is just daily I have a million things to do, and that's a blessing. That is not a life that I used to live, okay? So I'm asking for guidance and for peace. And I'm going to do an episode in a few weeks where we talk about handling stress and how I am handling it. Right. Oh, yeah, really well. And remaking my schedule and shit. I'm kind of aligning with things, okay? Because I can feel when I get stressed and busy, my program slipping from my fingers, but I didn't let that happen. These past few days, I've been doing a lot of step work and reading, and I've been in my big book girl. I've been in my program. I've been meditating. I've been re-seeking my higher power so that I am not lost in the sauce, okay, of my blessing of stressing summer that I have going on. Wow. Back to the lightning situation that we had going on. Y'all know my brother was struck by lightning? So me and my dad say that we are less likely to get struck. So no big deal. Also, my bun looks like this because it's braided. Braided bun. I got that from my hot boss. See it? I just didn't want you to think I was odd and lumpy. I did do my hair for you. Yep, I'm a professional. Thank you. Thank you. Now, what else did I have to tell you guys? Fruit flies gone. Check. Are they gone though? Honestly, the bugs are pissing me the fuck. We've talked about this before. We've talked about it, but we've talked about it too many times. Why am I so comfortable talking about my bugs in my house with y'all? And that's the other thing about the stress. Y'all know my brain does not operate well, and I'm trying not to jump around today. Okay, I'm going to try to be cohesive. That last episode was fucking painful to edit, and I'm sorry about that. I'm going to try to keep it together. But it is hard. My brain needs the structure of clean home, clean car. My house is always picked up, okay? Bed is made every day. Y'all know how I roll. But I need to get these baseboards done, and they're staring at me. Truly staring at me. Anyways, what am I even talking about? I wrote in the notes today to make sure I stay cohesive and I don't jump around so much. But this is who I am, and you're here to watch it. So what does that say about you? Wait, I've come for you 2 episodes in a row. I'm sorry. You're beautiful. You look so good today, by the way. Can y'all see me? I ain't wearing no shirt. I'm sorry. I think when I get stressed, I get country. I don't know. I've been hanging out with my brother more too, and he's fairly country. Being around my family more. I don't know. Now I got this damn shirt on. No torso. I hate when people make that joke when I wear the shirt. Like, okay, throw pillow. You want to talk to me? Mean. That happens when I get stressed too. And sometimes it is hard to transfer all of our affairs. And if you don't know what that means, the program, all of our affairs that we learn in the program is supposed to transfer over to our life. Okay. And I believe in that because I do think that is what keeps me sober. Genuinely. Like ridding myself of all of these debilitating, nasty ass attitudes and issues that I have. That's what keeps me sober. Not only because that's how I stay sober and away from drugs and alcohol, literally, but because it's like, what is the word I'm trying to say? Easy word to remember that I can't remember right now. It keeps me enthusiastic about my recovery. And it's one of my favorite things, as you know, is creating this world within myself that I can just hold on to. And when I'm getting stressed and I'm getting a lip, and I think that also comes with more responsibility and things just need to be in a certain place. And I'm having to tell some people what to do. And what am I doing, y'all? Asking for help when I need it. And that is something I have done these last few days. I realized like yesterday or the day before yesterday that I was extremely stressed and I was under a lot of stress. Self doesn't see self. Okay. I am big on that. It takes me a minute, and I think I've been stressed for like at least a week now. I think since I got home from Hamptons, I've been fairly stressed. And you know, what the fuck? I'm just going to pretend that I didn't forget what I was talking about because it's going to stress me out even more. And y'all, I already got the high cholesterol. Y'all know I got that high cholesterol, girl. So I need to keep this shit together. Okay. I cannot be stressed. I cannot be wigging out. Oh, yeah, because I'm delegating. Is that what am I going back? We're in warm-ups. Okay. We're warming up for this reason so that by the time I start talking, I can get it together for you. Just for you. And it's not painful to edit. But the delegating, maybe that's where the sass is coming from. And there's such a balance in like delegating, finding your voice, being kind, working the program and all your affairs, representing yourself appropriately. Like, and I have slipped a good few times. And what sucks about that is that like sometimes when I slip, it's somebody I don't see again because of my line of work. And like, not that I get an attitude or nothing with people, but like, I just could be better sometimes and I'm not. But the art of that isn't being perfect all the time and getting to a place that I am perfect. The art of that is recognizing it and letting it go and using it to move forward. That was not something I could do even in recovery. Even within the last few months, if I slip, it's like, fuck. And then it's eating at me. And now I'm recognizing like we have tomorrow and I've had a few hard days and I miss my period. So I think it has something to do with that. So I'm being gentle and it's like, there is tomorrow. We push forward and forward. Y'all know, why do I say forward like that all the time? And that is a big way of me calculating my stress right now. Is just that it is a season and there is no stopping and there is no quitting. We don't have a choice but to move forward and to keep crunching them numbers, babe. And by numbers, I mean hours in the day because there's not enough. Are you guys annoyed with me venting yet? I thought I like venting to you guys because I feel like I just really get it out in a productive way where I can like, y'all know I come here and I see my thoughts. I see things for what they are when we sit down and discuss it. And I'm always learning new things filming this podcast. And that's just a blessing for me. And it's therapeutic and it's just, and I wanted to have a good night at work tonight. Okay. Do I look like I'm going to cry? Because I might today. I honestly might. We're talking about anxiety. I only have one last thing to tell you. How far are we into warm? Oh, we're 10 minutes in. Do you guys, question, and I want hands. Do you guys like warm-ups? If you care about me, please comment if you like warm-ups, because I need them, obviously, but I do spend too much time doing them sometimes. But I need to update you on my life, girl. We're like besties, and I haven't seen you, so it's like, oh, what? I just jump right back in? I got shit to tell you, and I feel a certain way. You know what? Don't raise your hand. I don't care. Moving on. Do you want to hear what I'm about to tell you or not? Let me have a sip of coffee. Y'all remember Cars and it was like, I could dunk you in my coffee. That's how I felt about Carm today. My friend's baby. This is rough. It's rough today. I'm sorry, girls. Bottoms up. Now, I think at some point, and I think it might be getting into fall, that I will do some spooky story times, or like some, maybe not true crime because there's so many places to go with that shit. Maybe like conspiracy, maybe hauntings, maybe movie shit. I don't know, but I'm definitely going to dive into some fun bonus episodes. I will not take away the sobriety content. I will not take away the emotional content. I will show up for you every week. Yes, ma'am. But I'll have extra time because I'm not experiencing sun guilt and this insane schedule, which is great and fun. So I will start by telling you today that there are these 9 people, okay, in the Soviet Russia, where Leica is from. Y'all know Leica, first dog in space. Poor, God bless her soul. May she rest. And these people went on a little expedition. They were going on a hike, Carol. They were going on a hike. These people go missing. I'm telling you very short form. These people go missing and they find footprints. Okay, some barefoot. This is Russia, babe. It's cold as fuck. Yeah. Freezing. So where your shoes at, ho? Your toes okay? No, they're not okay. Some are barefoot. Some are Yeah, I don't know if I'm built for this life. Some are barefoot. Some have one shoe on. They finally find these people, all dead, of course. None of them made it. Dun, dun, dun. A couple are in a tree, actually. And they're huge. And these people are wearing, like, the girls are wearing boy clothes, boys are wearing girl clothes. And there's traces of radiation and shit, too. The radiation got me. Because what the fuck are you talking about right now? Radiation. In the tree. And there's deep claw marks. Like something was clawing at the bottom of the trees. Yeah, there's a movie called Devil's Pass about that. I low-key remember that movie. I've also, y'all know the different categories of horror? Oh, I'm excited for fall, y'all. And you know why I'm excited for fall? Because why the fuck it's so hot like this? And I think that's stressing me out on its own. I can't look beautiful, makeup's running. Look good, feel good, play good. That's what my dad says to me all the fucking time. And I can't do that shit in this heat, girl. My hair's just in some messy-ass bun and I'm getting an attitude. That's what's been going on. That's what's been going down. I'm for real. I got this messy ass bun and I'm sitting there like somebody's mama with my hands on my hips. Tone it down, Maddie. Now, there's different categories of horror. Y'all know this. So my favorite, thank you for asking. I've been wanting to tell you. So my favorite is Southern Gothic. Of course, my OG Southern Gothic. But I love an Arctic Gothic too. A Tundra Gothic, if you will. Like an Alaskan Gothic. I'm not talking Yeti Gothic. So like horror movie, but it's there is what I'm picturing. Okay. And then recently I realized I'm low-key a little bit with the Midwest shit. Midwest Gothic. And that's because it looks like the South, I think. And I'm a big Ethel Cain girl. Don't really know her music, but I love the vibe. Okay. I do like some of her songs. I need to move on. We're at 14 minutes, girl. Also, please comment. And I'm not saying comment because I'm like a YouTuber or whatever. I actually kind of want to know. I'm curious. Oh, I couldn't forget Swamp Gothic. Louisiana girl. Bayou shit. That Bayou shit. Love Bayou Gothic. Please comment your favorite Gothic down below. Thank you. I do love all Gothics. All Gothics are welcome. Moving on. We're talking about anxiety today. Okay. Thank you for tolerating those warm-ups. I feel warm. I feel much more warm. And it's not the heat. Anyways. Now, once I learned that anxiety was a survival mechanism, I found that pretty interesting. It was definitely always a surviving mechanism for me too. And that is because I believed I cannot survive essentially pretty much any hardship and any red flag where there isn't a sanctuary that can be met inside of me. And how do I evade anything that does that to me? Essentially, is how I operated. And that does go hand in hand with operating out of fear. And fear and anxiety, obviously, same thing, right? But there is some differences. What anxiety showed me is that I cannot make sanctuary out of self and that I'm not an operating adult. And that was really what I was afraid of. And I felt deep down for some reason that I cannot handle pretty much anything happening to me. I feel like the main difference in the fear and anxiety is trickery too. So fear is kind of outright and blatant. And the symptoms of fear are outright and blatant. And they're shell shocking. Like, fuck. Versus anxiety is like the lying version of that. And the deceitful version of fear. And I think what I recognized and what was so interesting to me when I realized that anxiety was such a survival mechanism was that I was the thing that I was afraid of. Sorry. And that lit a fire within me to be anxious of self and have a fear of self in a way. And I don't know if this makes sense to you, but because I couldn't believe that I was outrunning any chaos, anything that could potentially hurt me. My insides were screaming that I was the unsafe thing. I was unfit. You can't trust her. Don't trust her. And that's what lit me on fire, essentially. And that was a big difference for me in identifying my anxieties versus my fears. And was the trickery of the mask of self and not realizing that the lack of trust was to that degree. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about my lack of trust in myself and blah, 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 because that's what we did last week with discipline. And that's where a lot of this bullshit lies. And once you see the lack of trust that you have in yourself and how deep and dark that is, but you start to grow it, a lot of these, just like other things in life, a lot of these nasty manifestations of that start to deplete. And you can start making bigger strides away from things that have been harmed by fear, like our discipline and our anxieties and all of this bullshit, okay? And then because essentially my insides were the problem and were on fire, there was no escaping my anxiety. And it didn't feel that way. It also was genuinely that way. And I think that kind of also goes hand in hand. And I say this a lot, things that go hand in hand, but I make connections and I'm here to learn too, okay? That goes hand in hand in the confidence aspect where you think that you're not confident in the way you look, but really you're not confident in the thing you said yesterday, or you are really, really deep down into your gut. And it's about it's really hard for me to talk today. I'm sorry. About your personality traits more so than it is the way you look. And I think anxiety manifests in a similar way for me. And because of that too, it tricked my system into fully believing that I cannot handle anything. And I think that's a little bit of reiteration, but my system believed that. That wasn't a lack of trust in self. This was a belief that was deep rooted that I didn't even know it was a subconscious thing, right? And a belief is something that now is kind of on the way, like how we flip willpower to being. It's kind of becoming an identity. Honestly, when we start to believe something, we're becoming an identity. And I think when I look back to like really big triggers in my life, that's when things got dark, when I started to believe them, or bad things were becoming my identity. And traces of my mental health that weren't taken care of were becoming my identity. And I think, of course, I'm glad that all that happened because I am who I am today. But I do think when things got so bad that it became my identity, those were what left scars. And like when my identity was being anxious and not trusting self and trying to avoid myself too when I live in this body, which is such a deep form of self-hatred. And if that doesn't make sense to you, I'm sorry. And I don't know a better way to articulate it. And I make this podcast to be relatable, honestly, because that's what I looked for, and to be vulnerable. So it's not the answers. It's not me giving you what I think. It's just me trying to tell you things that you might not hear from other people. because I want you to be able to relate to somebody. And my deepest scars, like I said, were left from things like that. And I was afraid of being alone and my own thoughts, which is crazy because I have always been a loner in the ways that I run from society and I am a recluse. And I think that's part of my disease more so than of my being, right? And as I get older and more into sobriety, I can see a distinction in the difference of my being and my disease, my personality traits and what my disease wants of me. And when people say what my disease wants of me, and I think this can go even for mental health issues, because I think anxiety is a disorder, not a disease, and the disease is of the body, and alcoholism is an illness of the body. So it's a little different there. But I didn't understand what people were saying about that. My disease. My disease is me, though. Somebody's driving the ship. And I think I am just now starting to understand the differences. And the fact of me being a recluse and me being a loner and all this stuff, that comes from my disease. But obviously, aside from the opposite of addiction being connection, 2, I searched for that on my own. And I'm feeling this anxiety all of my life about being alone and being a loner. But I still run. And I think that's where my disease grabs onto me and it's like, oh, we can benefit from her terror, her walking terror where she thinks a bear is following her constantly. We can grab this and we can put a bunch of liquor in her system and try to fucking kill her. And I think to this day, still sometimes I don't understand when people are saying my disease wants me dead. This was my disease speaking. This was that. I can see the difference, like I said, repetition again, in my mental health and my disease. But some things I don't understand. And I think that is one where it's a little rocky. And we're learning together, okay? Rough start. I started off on a certain foot because I like to break the mental health stuff down to such a basic. I want it stripped away. I don't want it personified. And I don't think that's a good way to explain it sometimes because it's an enemy of mine. And I think it was something I faced for so long. I don't like to personify my enemies. And I think that's why maybe I struggle with your disease wants this. It's personifying it. It's not a person. It doesn't have a voice. That's something that I am actively trying to kill. You know, like I don't want it to have a face and name. I don't need all of that for it. I need to kill it. And I think kind of the same goes for my anxiety in a way. Talked about it that way, is stripping it bare bones to the ground. But I struggled with anxiety and then also OCD thinking, which is something that, and ideals, which is something that I have just kind of recently, you've heard me talk about it a little bit, am coming to terms with. And I couldn't believe that I had any traces of OCD. I'm like, what the fuck? Alcoholism. Hello. Like that's literally an obsessive compulsive disorder. That's alcoholism can be classified by obsession. And I've talked about my obsession in past episodes. If you want to go look at it, you better go watch it, girl. And when I was young, obviously our anxieties and our mental health grows with us in a disgusting way, I think. And it's also part of me at the same time. And it's not something that I want to wish I didn't have, because then that's like saying wishing I wasn't me. And I can trick myself into these games of hating myself and of hating who I am or what I'm faced with. And then I get stuck in the loop of why me. I'm sure a lot of you relate to that. And that why me loop is dangerous for me. That's a dangerous loop of thinking. We know that I avoid all loops of thinking, and that I encourage everyone to avoid all loops of thinking, but especially when it comes to that, because it's dangerous and it makes me feel pity for myself. And that is another place that I cannot be, because it takes me to a really dark place. Also, the last 2 nights I've had really bad relapse dreams. And maybe it's just this last few days. I'm just struggling a little bit, but I'm pushing forward. Back to what we're talking about. Now, my anxiety when I was little, obviously different than now. It was anxiety that I would never be enough. This started with sports, I think, and it started because I didn't have a lot of friends when I was really young. Later in life, we know that was something I strived for and something that I cared about and wanted to be. So I flipped that on its head. But anxiety that I would never be enough to be loved one day, to get married to somebody, to have kids. And oddly enough, that was a goal of mine at a very young age. I did look forward to that. And anxiety that I wouldn't actually grow up and meet friends. which is really sad. Like anxiety that I would actually not be enough. And then it was deeper rooted as a very young child in that I wasn't going to be heard. And I think that manifested, my anxiety because of that manifested in anger. And I flipped out and I swore that no one can hear me. People are listening to me screaming, but no one can hear me. And it was a fear that I would be like forgotten. And I have amazing parents. I did grow up in a larger family. So there's a lot of juggling that takes place. And maybe like that, I have a great family, not to blame or anything like that. But maybe there is a piece of that it just psychologically starts to happen maybe to a young child. And I didn't ever want to be left behind. And I still have that in some ways to this day. But I've just kind of tried to flip it on its head. And then I also, as a kid too, had fear of judgment. Especially of my actions, and that I wouldn't be able to explain myself, or I wouldn't be able to be seen in the way that I felt the situation was happening, because I didn't understand that accountability was what would take me further in life. And accountability, sorry, this is kind of depressing to talk about. Accountability is tenfold what would help me in my mental too, was just taking accountability for my actions instead of trying to explain that. And I think that was, of course, occurs in everybody, but it was a really anxious thinking of me, because I was then, if I'm not understood, they're not going to like me. If they think I just did this action because of that reason, but I did it because of this reason, and taking accountability is what just strips all of that away. And now I have a firm thing with accountability, and I struggle, don't get me wrong, but I have a much more firm thing about it, because that's just a life I have to live. It's easier. Life is easier when we take accountability. Okay. Accountability too is what does give us freedom from those pains of anxiety and of not being seen or heard for what we are, no matter how loud we're fucking screaming. And that would be my freedom one day. And that's my freedom now in all of the pain. Even if I've wronged somebody, even if there is no explanation, if I've just simply wronged somebody, accountability is the freedom from that. And accountability is the freedom to make a mistake. And not mistakes, I mean in the moment. Sorry, I don't want to sound stupid. Fear of being stupid. Don't have that fear. That's for sure. And now I think I recognize that, and I hope you recognize that, is that the freedom of accountability for the 15th time. And I wanted to kind of take it back to one of my first visceral experiences with anxiety, because later in my life things would get visceral for me and I would experience bodily function that indicated anxiety, and it would be horrifying for years to come. But which is crazy, because I think too a lot of my life I'm not seeking help, or like I don't even know that it's a disorder or like an issue I'm having, and that still happens to me to this day, and I just kind of like work with it instinctively, because I think I can't have help sometimes. And that's just something that's deep rooted in me. That's something that, I work on, and I ask for help now. But especially at these times at a young age, I thought I was weird and crazy. And I thought that other people didn't feel these anxious, horrible emotions like I felt. And that would cause anger and distress and destruction deeply in my life. And so one of my first memories that I have of visceral anxiety was my little sister has type 1 diabetes, T1D girl. If you have diabetes, I love you. Love you. I actually used to want to be an endocrinologist. Turns out you have to be smart to do that. So not a job that I'll be having. But she almost died when I was little. Whenever she was diagnosed, her blood sugar was so high that the machines couldn't read her blood sugar. And she went into a coma, and DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis, and went to a coma. And we nearly lost her. And I'm really emotional today. I think I missed my period, and it's causing me to stutter, to have anxiety, honestly. And I'm not speaking well this week. And this has been happening for several days. So we're working through it. Sorry to you. Just deal with it. Love you. Thanks. And we almost lost her several times in her life. And it's a big trigger for me, and a lot of anxiety, obviously. My sister and I are very close. If you haven't heard me talk about her, are you even watching? No, she's like a year younger than me. 16, we're 16 months apart, 18 months apart or 16 months apart. And I remember the day that she first got diagnosed and when she was in the hospital and she looked like a ghost. She was asleep on the couch when my parents finally decided to take her to the hospital. And we thought she was just sick, but it was almost like you couldn't even see her teeth either in there. It was like just horrifying. It was like looking at a corpse. And to this day, it is ingrained in my memory. I think like there's a trauma response that I will always have towards her illness. I'm about to start my period, so it's just like, and we can talk about this on another day, but that's my baby, you know, like for real. And so that's a mental picture that I have. And that day is a very easy day to walk back into. Like, I think I must have been 11 maybe, or 12, 11, 10 to 12, somewhere in there. And it's something that I remember like I could walk through the day and exactly what happened, what we ate, who was there, what people brought what from church. And I couldn't be at the hospital all day. I'm a child. My parents are potentially watching their daughter pass, and and I'm a kid, so my grandparents came and watched me. And that first night that she was in the hospital, I remember my grandmother helping me and soothing me and reading to me. And this is when my grandfather was alive too, and they both really helped me, obviously, in so many ways, and were there for me. And I asked my grandma, what if she dies? And my grandma answered that well, and she said, we don't get to say basically when people leave Earth, and but I'll be with you every step of the way. I didn't think I'd be so emotional about this right now. I'm about to start my period, y'all. And we all know how I feel about my sister, and it's deep. It's deeply, and this is why. There's a million reasons, but and I remember that first night that she was in the hospital. And it was like I was afraid. It wasn't just that I was sad and scared and worried. It was like there was a monster in the room. Like, when you're little and you freeze and there's like, you hear something outside of your door and you can't move and you're afraid. That was what it was like for me. And I didn't sleep well and I didn't move much. And I remember wanting to go get my grandma, who was sleeping like upstairs in my parents' room, but I just couldn't move. And I couldn't go get her. And that was one of my first, what I can remember being like a visceral, is that the right word? Whatever. A fucking physical, if visceral isn't right, reaction to anxiety and fear. And I think there are different levels to my anxieties and my fears. There's the anger one, and then there's just the natural fear. And my sister is someone who's fearless. And that's funny because we were literally talking about this the other day, and I wonder now if that's what it was, is this great fear of losing her and how horrifying that would be for me. Moving on. And eventually that physical reaction and my anxiety would kind of take over. And that would be how I navigated life. And when we navigate life by fear, when we navigate life by our depression or anxiety or these mental health problems, it's really scary. And it's really hard to break that cycle, especially if it starts at a young age. You don't even recognize it. The only way I can describe that kind of is like the devil kind of disguising himself as God in a way. And alcoholism looks like that for me too. And I think a lot of my life manifests in that way, in the devil dressing up as God. And like, y'all know I'm not that religious, but in a term of, I just think I'm doing the right thing. And the way that I'm navigating, the way that the pit that I feel in my stomach, I think that that's God calling to me, or like the way that things are supposed to be in a way. And I don't know how to articulate that. And again, if that's weird, sorry. If you get it, you get it. And then eventually my alcoholism rolls around. And, there are so many times that I faced anxiety through high school, through middle school. It was a tough life to live, and I want to be transparent in experiencing that and it being identified strictly as anxiety. I don't know. I was always nervous. I was anxious. I was anxiety ridden to a point that I would vomit. Like there were just times that it was really hard for me. And these weren't things that I went to people about. These weren't things that I told my parents about, told my friends about. I didn't tell people about this. I was embarrassed to feel this decrepit way from my own feeling, right? And I don't need to reiterate that I thought there was something wrong with me. And there was. And I think it helps me to be such an advocate for that now, because I just want to go back and hug her and be there for her. And that's not something that I can do, but I can do that for myself. I can try to go back and hug her the best I can and nurture her and reassure her that that's okay. But I also want to do that in the little girl in you, you know, and I want you to see that and understand it as real pain that you deserve to heal. And like I said, this is somewhere that more than anything, I just want people to feel seen. So if I don't get to the bottom of something, there's no answer. I can't make sense of it. It's something that I'm learning. And so you understand that other people walk the same walk. Because like I've said before, that is some shit that saved my life. Understanding that shit. Genuinely, that other people knew me and saw that shit, to this day will always be what saves my life. And I'm sure there'll be more times again where somebody being vulnerable is what keeps my spirit alive. And I'm sure that will continue to happen to me. And then we get to alcoholism. And alcoholism eventually at some point looked like me laying in bed all day, drinking. And there'd be TV playing in front of me, and I could not tell you what show was even on. And I'm watching it. Like, maybe what show's on. I could not tell you what's happening, nothing, because my mind is stuck in this awful pattern. But again, I'm feeling these visceral reactions where I don't feel like I can move. Stuck in weird positions. Like, I don't know how to describe that. And I had that a lot with drugs too, but like stuck in a strange position where I can't even move, and it's anxiety. And that's what that is. And, a lot of people too say this, that and this happened for myself as well. And I just feel like some things, it's like, you can go watch a podcast somewhere else about this. We're not necessarily talking about what alcoholism looks like, but, you know, a part of alcoholism, especially for me and for, I think, every alcoholic to some degree, is the pattern of the shame of what you said yesterday. And that gets a lot of people stuck in alcoholism. It gets a lot of people stuck in that cycle. And anxiety goes hand in hand with that. So I think anytime that you're experiencing any type of substance abuse disorder, whether it's substances or alcohol or whatever, that to some degree, like, that's an anxiety thing. It's a loop that you're stuck in your head. Just like the obsessive situation. But that's what it looked like for me in my alcoholism. Because I was stuck in that cycle, eventually I was silent. And I went through several periods of my life, and we talked about it before. I won't beat it again, but where I was mute. And this was a result sometimes of drugs, sometimes of mental health, sometimes of alcohol. It was just a result of poor mental health and of this horrible life that I was kind of making for myself. And it was another time in my life that I struggled to speak to people again. And I struggled to leave my home. And isolation wasn't always how I would characterize my alcoholism. A lot of people, that's how they characterize it. They were isolated and stuff. But even going out, struggling to talk to people, because eventually the noise took over and there was no silence left. The anxiety was so bad that there wasn't any silence. And that's when I would start to struggle speaking to people, because there's this revolving door. And that can still happen for me now as a manifestation of any anxieties that I have. And we'll get there. But that constant, just a revolving door. Like, how can you even listen to other people speaking? You can't. And that's what a lot of it was for me. Not that I can't talk, that I can't even hear what you're saying to me. That's what it is. It's like, I can't hear what you're saying. It's not that I can't maybe respond or something. I can't stop what's happening in here. Like, it won't stop. And I'm staring at you speaking to me, but I don't know what the fuck you're saying to me. And now I can kind of articulate that as anxiety. And I think that's a manifestation of a lot of different mental health experiences. And if that's something you experience, then I urge you to understand that's a symptom, a greater symptom of something wrong. And you know, I think the media and I think because we got so victimizing in our generation, that the media portrays that and people just say that, but they don't mean that. And a lot of people suffer from that greatly. And if you understand what I'm talking about, it is a symptom of something greater. And I wish I knew that too, but I thought, like, I'm a pussy if I go talk about this shit. And again, reiterating, I'm crazy. So I wasn't sure how to fix that, but I just want you to be aware of that. And it pains me to think back to like such an anxiety-ridden state that like it's just a box, you know? And it's really, really isolating and lonely. And it's terrifying, honestly. Also with drugs, like kind of how I just explained, it was horrible if I took drugs. Gut-wrenching. The anxiety, gut-wrenching to a next level of like fucked up, really fucked up dark pain. And this was the first time of me loving pain and it being a cycle for me. And this was where I loved pain. I was never a cutter. I was never a self-mutilator, but I was always self-destructive. And for some reason, got dog hair on my lips, girl. These deep, dark holes and pits of these anxieties, especially when they went hand in hand with drugs. With alcoholism, I recognized it as pain too. But with drugs, it was like an even extra high, literally, I guess, where I loved it. And there was some fucked, sick, twisted side to it of me being mute, being something I loved. And like, I don't know. And that's just the mind. I can't explain that because that's the mind of a diseased person. And I do view my alcoholism and my addiction as a disease. And I'm gentle about it now. So that's something that it can't be explained because I'm diseased and I'm insane. And that's a reflection of my mind. So, and I'm so glad that I see that now. And because it caused me so much tremendous, not only pain, but like PTSD, like just a lot of really bad scars in my life. And now to be able to heal those and recognize it as a disease is much easier for me. And it's so much easier to be delicate about it. And it causes me to like never even want drugs. You know what I'm saying? Like alcohol is in some ways like that, but it's like drugs I don't want to touch, you know, like for that reason. It's alcohol, of course, I don't want to touch, but I have my moments. I had a relapse stream 2 nights ago. Like there are different, like it's different. There's a way that I can still want it in my disease, but I don't want to touch drugs because of how deep and fucked up that was. Okay. And when I would get sober, and that's kind of the deepest that I'm going to go talking about my anxiety in my alcoholism. I mean, it fueled my life. This was a fire that started when I was a child, back when I screamed for people to listen to me when I was at the top of my lungs and everyone can fucking hear me. Like, this shit is so deep rooted. And so like we can talk about it more if you're struggling. You know, you're welcome to reach out to me at any point. And not just struggling with alcoholism or drugs, more bugs, but struggling with anxieties too, or mental health stuff. I physically shook when I got sober. It was something that I would do. Of course, I was happy and things, but there were moments where like, because I was feeling my anxiety for the first time. I wasn't self-medicated. And it was crazy because, you know, subconsciously I'm self-medicating this anxiety this whole time. That's what I'm doing. Whether it was my anxiety or my depression or however it showed up at the time, mostly anxiety, I was self-medicating. And I did not have that medication anymore. And so I was spiraling at times. And when it would hit my anxiety, it was so bad. And even when I shared in the rooms, like speaking, sometimes my voice would literally shake. And that's an embarrassing thing that I have. But I also have social anxiety, and this is going to be a different episode because there's so many ways to talk about anxiety. And I want, like, it's definitely, as you can see, it's a passion of mine and a deep, dark pain that I have. And so there's a million ways for me to talk about this, and I want you to feel seen. So we will continue to talk about it for many episodes to come. The social anxiety is like so much to talk about. I think I touch on it in here a little bit, but you know, there's many ways. And so my social anxiety was also out of control because it was like, it's embarrassing to not be able to talk to people. As somebody who can sit here and make this, but then like I go talk to somebody in person, like, you know what I'm saying? And obviously at the time I wasn't making this podcast, but still, sometimes my voice shakes. It's a lot better now, but we're going to kill that. You know, I was finally just left alone with the beast, and I had not yet learned how to ask for help. I don't know if I chose necessarily this, but I went on autopilot. And I'm not sure. I think it was a means of survival. And a lot of me is animalistic in terms of my ways of survival. My ways of survival are also twisted. I think anyone with disordered thinking deals with that. But like, and that's kind of what anxiety and different stuff is. It's like very animalistic and primal, but fucked up. Is that a weird way to describe it? Is that dramatic? I don't really know. But I subconsciously, I think, chose to go on autopilot. And it was, again, a means of survival because I just knew from the beginning, for some weird reason, I knew being sober is the only way to get around this shit because of who I am. And I think that, that's a blessing to see people before me in my life go ahead of me and, show me what that world is like, and understanding addiction and stuff from a different level. Is where I get that from. It caused, being on autopilot like that caused my internal monologue too to just like, is that the right word? Internal monologue, to just be like out of control. And that's more anxious thinking and more manifestations of loops occurring constantly. And I recognize that, and I think I heard this in the room somewhere. I read it in the big book. I read it through some type of literature about, and I'm sure I saw this on TikTok and shit, was like that these thoughts aren't mine. And I did not feel like they were. A lot of my anxious thoughts, y'all know, got to a point that they were intrusive thoughts, which caused me to do fucked up things in my addictions and in my alcoholisms and like just be fucked and get myself in bad places and bad spots. But they didn't feel like they belonged to me. And a lot of them didn't. It was disordered thinking again. But I didn't want them to be mine. And there was something, and I don't know what it is about my brain and the identity. And I have a thing with identity. And in some ways it saves my ass, and in some ways it harms me. And I think this is a way it saves my ass. And I don't want my identity to be so much so not mine. And of this thinking that doesn't feel like me, and it feels painful and treacherous, and it doesn't feel like me. And I wanted to master the art of letting that go, of being able to let things go. And this was new. This is an introduction to my life that I had never had before. Up until this moment, I genuinely thought the way out of disordered thinking and out of that pain was to think it to the bottom. That was a lesson that I learned finally. Thank God that that's not how things work. When you have disordered thinking and mental issues, you don't think to the bottom. That's a loop and a cycle, and you're not a normal person. You can't think your problems away. There's no answer. Self doesn't see self. And maybe that's one of the first things I heard where I was like, whoa, holy shit. Yeah, I don't. And then I started listening to what other people said about me, and they loved me deeply for who I was. They didn't love me for my alcoholism. They didn't love me for being a chameleon. They didn't love me for me trying to be what they wanted. They loved me because they loved me. And they pointed out these great qualities in me. They pushed me forward. They rooted for me in my sobriety. And self doesn't see self, but they saw me for who I was. And I think that was a big turning point. And it makes me, I'm sorry, my period, yeah, but it makes me a little emotional because it was a big turning point for me and my anxiety to listen to others when they tell me that I'm great, and when they tell me I deserve it and deserve peace and happiness and all this shit. And I urge, if that's something that you can do, and it took time, but it was the beginning of me flipping things on its head and transforming in that respect. And I urge you to really listen to what other people are saying about you, because it's not negative. People love you. And that goes for everyone, I believe, honestly. And I mean, listen to your mom. Listen to people that know you. Like, that shit counts. Like, your mom says that about you because she gave birth to you and she sees who you are. Doesn't say that shit to you because she she might enable you, but your friends love you too. And these people that you think hate you or have something, vendettas or this thing, it's not real. And it's disordered thinking. And so I urge you to flip that coin of really listening to people when they speak to you and how they treat you, and they have respect for you. And that's something that you can't see. And it was a big turning point, reiterating. Because of that, too, these great fears that I am not enough, this is what's causing that to diminish. This is the work behind the scenes that is actually working for me to help benefit my anxiety and my depressions, too. But especially because today we're talking about anxiety. Because it's the fear that I'm not enough. It's the fear that I never will be. It's the fear that everyone hates me and is laughing about me behind my back. It's the fear of people talking shit about me, which was always something that I fucked me, and I really, really struggled with, and I thought was real, and it wasn't. People talk shit about me, but now I don't care if they are. And I think that was the beginning of fear diminishing, and that's what anxiety, getting to the bottom of anxiety, I started to learn really looks like, is getting rid of fear. And also, lunacy also helps with us. And I talk about lunacy in a lot of episodes because it fucked me too. And I aim to understand my lunacy in a lot of ways because it saves my life all the time. Like, and it saves my ass too from my disordered thinking or from beating myself the fuck up. And my fears is what I hooked to. This was a life source for me. My fears are what helped me see life. And like I said, again, the devil dressed up as God, where I thought it was leading me in the right directions. I feel these things because I'm supposed to. And, you know, that's not my identity. And that's not fair for me to do to myself. And it's not fair for you to do to yourself. Just get into ways that I have combated anxiety over time. But I have never been in a place like this in my life. My anxieties are extremely low. Like, extremely. There are days I don't feel... I need to make sure we're good on time. Okay. There are days that I don't feel anxiety whatsoever. And that isn't something that just happened. That was something that I really worked towards. And really, really fought for in myself because I wanted to transform. And transforming is changing your fears, is adapting to the new, is changing who you used to be, and not recognizing life in these glasses where you're just fucked constantly and sad and afraid. And so a couple of big things that I did, and there's so many ways to talk about that transformation that you make in yourself. And I think that anxiety, just like depression and some other mental health stuff, is so personalized. We each have our own monster. Just like I talk about alcoholism, we each have our own version of alcoholism and what that monster looks like. I think the same goes for mental health. And so I think it's different in everyone. And obviously I'm not a professional, nor do I care to say that. So I think there's a lot of clinical things that obviously that take place with anxieties. And I don't think this episode is necessarily talking about that, more so you to be seen once again. Sorry about that. But one of the things I did definitely was initially, and something I recognized I had to do early, was speaking when my voice shook and having my own back. Well, this was the beginning of having my own back, because that's really hard to do. And there's so many episodes about me doing that. And that's like a whole transformation on its own, is learning to do that when you hate yourself so much. But not caring about embarrassment was something that I pushed for out of the box, that I just recognized was going to be something that I needed to do. And people say, you know, a lot of sobriety is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that was a huge thing for me too. That, and then also it was pivotal for me to make a priority to listen first before I succumb to this internal dialogue. So like being present was something that was really hard for me. And now I can articulate that as anxiety too, because I'm not in my body. I'm not present. I'm not understanding what you're saying to me. And to not succumb so quickly. And this also comes with patience, with understanding that I will succumb to it, that my anxiety will get the best of me at times. This is something that I fight against constantly, just like the stress I'm experiencing now. I fight. It doesn't matter. You keep fighting. You keep fighting. And I think that's something, creating a beast out of yourself in that way is really hard, but also was really pivotal for me in a way. So I think these are two big things in the beginning of sobriety. And there's so many ways, like I said, but for the very beginning of sobriety, that really helped me, because I couldn't live this anxious and unmedicated way of life now. And it was like really hard for me to balance that and recognize my own pain. And I wrote in here, which is very true: how could I have a fear of not being liked lead me to being a bad friend? How could I be afraid of the future when I was granting myself all these new opportunities and the shot at a beautiful life? I want you to recognize things when they're disordered thinking, when it's lunacy. And like last episode, I got annoyed with how many times I said I was crazy, but I want you to recognize it. There's nothing wrong with it. But how can I be a bad friend? Or how can I have anxiety of not being liked, being so bad that it causes me to be a bad friend? It's lunacy. When I step back and view it as that, then I can change. Then I can be there for her. Then I can have patience. Because what the fuck? Normal people, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's just some shit that made me finally recognize, like, if I'm having this fear, then why am I reacting in this way? That's not going to help me. When I have fear of the future, why, you know, I'm granting myself these opportunities to be sober, to have this beautiful life. So if I'm scared of the future, why is my reaction to go be a drunk? You know? And then I'm starting to handle situations better. I'm starting to recognize my anxieties, recognize my depressions, and I'm handling situations better. So this great anxiety I had against myself, these red flags where I'm insane, allegedly, and I can't handle anything, which is where my anxiety was based as a child too. And I didn't want to be touched with anything that could hurt me. But now I'm flipping on its head. I'm home. handle things. And that was a beautiful, beautiful feeling for me, and such a great amount of freedom and understanding. And it was time finally to outgrow those deep fears that don't belong to me anymore. That's not mine. That does not belong to me. If I've flipped it on its head. And now I can see these fears as what's kind of starting to be healthy and what's disordered. Again, self can't see self, but I can feel a little better because I have visceral and very physical reactions to things like anxiety and fear. I'm a scared kid. And that's an acceptance situation. I have to accept that. I have to accept that I am a scared little kid, and I was born that way. I am a scared child in a forest being chased by a bear, and this is the way that I live life. And I can't pretend that there's not going to be fear in my life, that there's not going to be judgment to come. I have to accept her and hug her and start recognizing my fears as something that's real, and maybe a healthy fear. And to me, I've said this before, there is no healthy fear. That's what I thought. People say there's healthy fear. I'm like, there is no, everything I experience is visceral for me. And I'm so tired of this physical thing too, where I just like spit it out, Junior, is something for me, for real, like the stuttering, everything. Yeah, and that's because fear is amplified within me. And I started to get a handle on all of this, and then Allie dies. Allie dying, it introduced me to a new level of anxiety that I hadn't felt since my sister, that day that I talked to you about just now, being in the hospital, about to die. And I hadn't faced this level of anxiety in a long time. And a little bit of it I did feel in my alcoholism and when I was mute in Florida. Both of those were terrorizing moments. But I was sober this time when Allie died. When Allie died, I was sober. And it was absolutely gut-wrenching. I couldn't move. And I was so afraid. And I think I was afraid. There were so many things, but I was definitely afraid of more people dying. And I think that's a thing with, grief. And I won't go to over-explain that because if you face it, you understand. But something just comes where you're just anxious and you think somebody else is going to die, or like that I did Allie wrong, or like there's just so many reasons to feel anxiety, obviously from somebody passing, especially in a way like that. And that feeling came the second that I got the call that she was gone. Y'all know I struggle to talk about it to this day. And it stayed until probably about my birthday, if not a little past. My birthday's in February, but early February. So, and she passed December 19th. So, that level of anxiety and of fighting for peace in any way and against grief, in a mind that suffers from disordered thinking, and the way that she passed, and like, it's hard to talk about, but that was really painful for me. Because there were so many loops that you can get caught in when somebody so beautiful passes like that. And Allie taught us to live the Allie way, and that was something very important to me. I've talked about that multiple times when I speak of Allie. And I decided because of her that I can't internalize this. And this wasn't something that she taught me or because of her. It was genuinely being instilled in me because I wanted to make her proud, and I wanted to make the best of this situation because she doesn't get to now, and that was something that she always did and always pushed me to do all throughout my life. Anytime she saw deep, dark pits that I went through, she saw my diseases in every right, my alcoholism, my addiction, my anxiety, my depressions, and she was there through all of it. And these are things that she pushed me to do. And it wasn't just me. These were in real life. I didn't want to internalize that bullshit. And it wasn't who I was anymore. And I fought away from that. And Allie told me she was proud of me. I knew she was proud of me. And so it helped me deeply with understanding my disordered thinking and my anxieties around it, because I have no choice but to go out and live. And I can't jeopardize that. Not when Allie's dead. Not when I owe her so much. Like, I have to go out and live. And I have to do that fully and freely and loudly and in assistance of others. And And that was really, really important to me. And once again, that's something that she taught me, and it helped transform my anxiety after she passed. And that was to never run and hide from myself too. And that's an honor. Like, it'll always be an honor to be a student of hers. Like, and she teaches me still. And I've always said that she's teaching me, and she teaches all of us. And that's an honor to be her student. And, I don't run from things anymore. Not from emotions, not in that way. And I don't roll over and give up to anxiety, because it's so easy to roll over and give up to anxiety and depression. And that's not a life that I am allowed to pursue anymore. Again, not when she's dead, And I knew that I could easily be busy enough to not listen, to not want to feel those things, but it wasn't an option. And this was a divine thing that happened. I think, it was her having a hand in my life. It was the other side, but it was divine. This was not like me not giving myself that choice wasn't necessarily something I implemented. It was very natural that I don't get to run from these emotions. And like, I need to feel every moment of this, and I need to feel everything to a different level, because I need to heal from her, and I can hear her calling to heal, like in this deep way. And she was instilling that in me, and there's prayer, there's meditation, and I can tell you about, there's so many ways, to help anxiety, especially going through grief or through hard times. But, it's a decision to choose yourself, and it's a decision to fight for your mental health. And that's all it takes. And I don't mean that like it's a decision. You just have to make the decision. And then once you do, and you fight for your life, you fight for your freedom. It's you fighting for your freedom away from your brain. And that is a decision that you get to make. And it is fucking beautiful, because it transforms you. And all of a sudden, it's not so hard to get up and keep going. It's not so hard to keep pushing. It's not so hard to combat this shit, because you already made the decision. You already signed the contract. Now you just got to keep pushing. And I know that sounds crazy and like very gym bro, but it's genuinely what it was for me, because this isn't easy for me to keep pushing. It's not easy for me to go against my awful disordered thinking for years that I felt this way. This is who I was. This is my identity. This wasn't easy to get over, and still fight to this day. And Allie also gave me the opportunity to feel deeply and to love that. And I think she helped in my sobriety with that, because that's a struggle getting into sobriety, that, feeling things, feeling emotions, whether it's peace, whether it's anger, resentment, whatever you're feeling, it's a hard introduction. And, she gave me the opportunity to want to feel deeply. And, I kind of just said that in a way it's reiteration, but I think that really helped too with my anxiety, was wanting to feel all those emotions, and it being like an honor to feel it. And that goes with my weird psyche too, of how I used to love pain, and the way that happened to me, the way that it looked was emotional instead of physical and harming myself physically. It was an emotional thing. And I think like that goes hand in hand. There was a hair in my nose. I didn't pick my nose. That goes hand in hand in that aspect of like, now it's beautiful and I want to experience it, but not in a sick, sadistic, twisted way of the cycle of mental abuse to yourself. It's in a way of freedom and in a way that I chose it. And that transformed my anxiety as well. And because it presented me with the opportunity to provide myself emotional haven and emotional stability, which is, the beginning of a precipice of a beautiful life of sobriety, because it was just something I chased and I loved that. It was a high to me to be emotionally stable and to love that. And because of that too, my thinking now is flipping to being exploratory instead of invasive. And there's a really big difference in healing. And it's invasive. The way that mental disorder looks like, it's completely invasive. But I wanted to explore, and it was exploratory. And that was something that I was provided with through Allie. And I'm not sure what that would look like otherwise, and everything happens for a reason. Not that I'm saying, but that we count our blessings, and I've learned to understand that is that each blessing deeply counts. And that is one that is a gift that I received from her that I am thankful for constantly. And in some ways now my anxieties have been demoted because they are more cautious and nervous than they are detrimental about myself. Does that make sense? I can't fear things that haven't happened. It's just a rule too. And I think it goes with the decision making. Set up those rules for yourself. I can't have these lunacy loops. I need to trust myself enough that I don't leave room for this anxiety, not the same way. And I can't fear things that haven't happened, and I can't think things to the bottom. When you set those up and you recognize it, it's so much easier to heal. It's like guidelines. And then we have social anxiety, which immersion shit is what works for me, is forcing myself out of these boxes, and forcing myself into the wild is really helping with my social anxiety. And that's something I think we'll talk about at a different time. But I think immersion and exposure, I guess what I'm looking for, actually exposure therapy and stuff like that, that's what works for me. And like, not literally, but like as in a therapist, but like making myself do shit and being exposed to these great fears that I have, and like realizing that I can triumph it. Just like all those great things that I said aren't that hard for me in the first place. Being patient, being a realist, that I mentioned again in another episode, is like, that's one too. That, I have these great fears of things, and I push myself to them, and I realize it's not that fucking hard. And they say the greatest things rest on the other side of fear. And I think that was a real quote that I heard too that really helped me, because it's true. My freedom is right on the other side of that fear, especially when it comes to anxiety. And I want you to know that freedom, when you push towards that anxiety, you push yourself out of your box and into that shit, that's freedom. On the other, waiting for you right there. And it's beautiful. The lack of anxiety that I feel to this day after being mute from anxiety is something that you can't pay for that shit. And I implore you to run from the monster that is yourself into the home that is also yourself. And, these disordered thinkings, these aren't little. This causes people into addictions. It causes people into really dark places, into death. So these aren't small things. Like, you're right for feeling this. And I wish that I could tell myself that from a long time ago. And this episode is getting long, and I have to go to work, so I have to leave. But we will talk about anxiety in a lot of terms from here on out. And I just want you to understand that I mean it when my inbox is open. And I love you, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.